13 seconds. That's all it took. One pole, one gate, one catastrophic moment, and the greatest comeback in ski racing history was over before it began. Vonn didn't just fall. She cartwheeled down an icy mountain at 140 kilometers per hour, hit her head, and lay motionless in the snow while her microphone stayed live, broadcasting every scream across the Dolomites. The crowd went silent. The music started playing, not to celebrate, but to drown out the sound. And here's what nobody is talking about yet. Stay with us, because what we're about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about that morning. Race morning, February 8th, 2026. Cortina, Italy. The sky was clear, the snow was packed hard, and the Dolomite Mountains stood beneath perfect winter light. Conditions could not have been better. It was the kind of morning that felt made for something historic. The women's Olympic downhill final was about to begin. Lindsey Vonn, 41 years old, was the 13th racer out of the E8 gate. That number 13 would later feel like a sign nobody noticed in time. She had spent over a year preparing for this single run. She had rebuilt her body from the ground up. She had won races that season that nobody, not even her closest supporters, had expected her to win. 8 World Cup races, 7 podium finishes. At an age when most skiers are retired and coaching younger athletes, she was still the fastest woman on the mountain. She was not just competing. She was the clear gold medal favorite. The crowd that had gathered along the course that morning was different from a typical race crowd. These people had come specifically to watch Lindsey Vonn. Her father, Alan Kildo, sat in the stands. Snoop Dogg was in the crowd. Cameras from television networks across 3 continents were locked on the start gate. Commentators were calling it one of the most anticipated individual runs in Winter Olympic history, not just in skiing, but across all sports. The air around the venue crackled with a kind of nervous energy that you cannot manufacture. Everyone could feel that something big was about to happen. Vonn slid into the gate. She took a breath. She tapped her poles together 3 times her ritual, her signal to herself that she was ready. She pushed out of the gate, and the mountain had other plans. The crash, before Vonn even reached the first timing checkpoint, her right ski pole caught a gate at the crest of a jump in the upper section of the course. One tiny snag. At 140 kilometers per hour, that was all it took. She had no time to react, no time to correct. At that speed, the human body simply cannot respond fast enough. Her right shoulder and arm clipped the gate hard. She was thrown sideways into the air, spinning over her own skis, arms flailing with nothing to grab onto. She hit her head during the tumble. Then she came down hard on her back, skis crisscrossed beneath her body, and her mandatory airbag inflated on impact with a force that spectators nearby said they could hear from the sideline. She did not get up. For a few seconds, nobody in that crowd moved either. Then the reality of what they had just watched settled in. Her microphone was still live. The broadcast picked up everything. Reports say she cried out, that she could not feel her legs and could not get her skis off. Those words traveled through speakers across the entire venue and into living rooms in dozens of countries. The crowd, that had been electric with excitement just seconds earlier, went completely silent. The Washington Post described it as a hush that fell over the entire Dolomites. Race officials stopped everything immediately. Medical teams were on the snow within moments, working around her for somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes. Then came the stretcher. The red evacuation bag zipped around her, the yellow helicopter. It lifted off directly above the spectators standing at the finish line, the same people who had come to watch her cross it. It had been exactly 13.4 seconds. The impossible comeback. To understand why this crash shook the world the way it did, you have to understand what Lindsey Vonn had already survived just to stand in that starting gate. She retired on February 10, 2019, at the World Championships in Sweden. She won a bronze medal in her final race, but behind that medal was a body that had been pushed past every reasonable limit. A torn LCL, 3 fractures in her shin. The right knee she could barely bend or straighten. She walked away from skiing at 34 years old with 82 World Cup victories, 3 Olympic medals, and a body she described as broken beyond repair. The doctors agreed. There was nothing left to fix. For 5 years, that was the end of the story. Lindsey Vonn retired. Done. Then, in April 2024, a surgeon did something that had never been attempted on a competitive skier before. Vonn underwent a partial titanium knee replacement in her right knee using a robot-assisted surgical system. A custom-fitted titanium alloy implant was placed inside the joint, along with a synthetic meniscus made of polyethylene. It was precise, experimental, and completely untested at the level of elite sport. It worked. For the first time in over a decade, the grinding, constant pain in her knee was gone. She said it felt like night and day. She said she had not felt that free in 15 years. That surgery did not just reduce her pain, it gave her back the ability to ski the way she once had. She announced her return on November 14, 2024. By December, she was racing. By the following season, she was not just competing, she was dominating. On December 12, 2025, she won the downhill at St. Moritz by nearly a full second and became the oldest downhill World Cup winner in history at 41 years old. She cried during the national anthem. She won again at Zauchensee in January 2026. In 8 World Cup races that season, she finished on the podium in 7. She arrived at the Olympics not as a sentimental story, but as the clear favorite to win gold. Nobody had ever done anything like it, and the sports world was watching every second. 9 days out, January 30th, 2026. Crans, Montana, Switzerland. Vonn was wearing the red bib, the mark of the discipline leader, the fastest woman in downhill that season. At the first checkpoint, she had the quickest time on the course. She was not just competing that day. She was hunting another win. Then, a jump did not go the way it was supposed to. She landed awkwardly, lost control in a fraction of a second, and slammed hard into the safety nets at the side of the course. She was tangled in those nets for several minutes, unable to free herself, unable to stand. When she finally skied down the remainder of the hill, she stopped multiple times, reaching down to grab her left knee. Everyone watching knew something was wrong. She was airlifted to the hospital before the race was even finished. 2 days later, on February 3rd, the news came. Her ACL, the ligament that holds the knee together and gives it stability, was completely ruptured in her left knee. Not partially torn, not strained, gone, 100%. She also had a bone bruise and meniscal tears in the same joint. For any normal athlete, that diagnosis ends the season immediately. A ruptured ACL typically means surgery, followed by 6 to 9 months of rehabilitation. The Olympics were 9 days away. The sports world collectively exhaled and assumed that was it. Her Olympic dream, after everything she had been through, was finished before it started. No reasonable person could argue otherwise. But Vonn is not a reasonable person, not when it comes to this. She posted a message that stopped people mid-scroll. She said if there was one thing she knew how to do, it was a comeback. Then she went to work proving it was not just words. She posted videos of herself doing box jumps and heavy squats. showing that her leg muscles were strong enough to compensate for the missing ligament. On February 6th, her first Olympic training run, she finished 11th. On February 7th, the day before the race, she clocked the third fastest training time on the entire course. The night before the race, she wrote one final message. She named the odds stacked against her, her age, her missing ACL, the titanium knee, and then she said she still believed. She closed with a line that now reads like both a prophecy and a farewell. No matter what happens, I have already won. The helicopter moment. While Vonn was being treated on the mountainside, something else entirely was unfolding at the bottom of the course, and it would become the moment that defined the entire day. Breezy Johnson had raced earlier that morning with bib number 6. She had come down the mountain clean and fast, posting a time of 1 minute and 36.10 seconds. Then she sat down in the leader's chair and waited. That waiting, watching racer after racer come down, not knowing if her time would hold, is one of the most brutal experiences in all of sport. Every second in that chair is its own kind of pressure. But Johnson knew pressure. She had lived inside it for years. In January 2022, she had torn her ACL on this same Cortina course during training. That injury took the Beijing Olympics away from her completely. She never got to race. Then, while she was still rebuilding, she served a 14-month ban from competition for missed anti-doping tests. 2 separate nightmares, back to back. Most athletes would have walked away from the sport entirely. She did not walk away. She came back. And now here she was, sitting in the leader's chair at the Olympics, on the same mountain that had once broken her. Racer after racer came down. Nobody touched her time. When the 36th and final skier crossed the finish line and Johnson's name stayed at the top of the board, it was official. Breezy Johnson was the Olympic champion, gold by just 0.04 of a second over Germany's Emma Eicher. She became only the second American woman in history to win Olympic downhill gold. The first was Lindsey Vonn at Vancouver in 2010. That connection alone was enough to make the moment feel like something out of a film. But what came next made it unforgettable. At the press conference afterward, Johnson revealed something that silenced the room. While she had been sitting at the bottom of the course, watching the yellow helicopter carry Vonn away from the mountain, a message came through from Vonn's coach. It said that Vonn, strapped to a stretcher, in pain, being airlifted with a broken leg, was cheering for her teammate from inside that helicopter. She was not focused on her own pain. She was not thinking about everything she had just lost. She was watching to see if Breezy Johnson would win. Johnson could barely get the words out when she spoke about it. She said the emotional pain of a moment like that was something else entirely. That physical pain was something athletes learned to manage, but watching a dream die was a different kind of hurt. She said she did not know exactly what Vonn was feeling in that helicopter, but she knew what it meant to fight for this mountain and lose. Then, in a moment that somehow captured everything about the strange, emotional chaos of that day, Johnson's gold medal broke into 3 pieces during the post-race celebration. The ribbon came apart while she was jumping up and down. She held up the broken pieces at the press conference, tears still on her face, and told everyone not to jump in their medals. The crowd laughed, and then went quiet again. Because the day was still too heavy for laughter to last very long, was it worth it? Right now, across sports media and fan communities everywhere, one debate is louder than any other. Should Lindsey Vonn have raced at all? It is not a simple question, and the people asking it are not all coming from the same place. Those who say she should not have raced point to a set of facts that are difficult to argue with. She was 41 years old. She was competing on the most dangerous course in women's alpine skiing. Completely gone. Medical professionals who spoke publicly before the race used words like enormous risk and serious concern. Several said that competing in a downhill event without an ACL at that speed, on that course, was something that went beyond the normal boundaries of athletic risk-taking. They were not wrong to say it, but others look at the same facts and reach a completely different conclusion. Her muscles, built over decades of world-class competition, were capable of providing the stability that the missing ligament would normally give. And more than that, Vonn herself knew her body better than any doctor watching from the outside. She had lived inside this body for 41 years. She had won an Olympic gold medal at Vancouver in 2010, while carrying a stress fracture in her forearm. If anyone on Earth had the experience to assess what her body could and could not handle on that mountain, it was her. She looked at the risk clearly, named it openly the night before the race, and chose to race anyway. That was her right, and here is the part that often gets lost in this debate. Her crash was not caused by her knee giving out. The ACL tear did not bring her down. What ended her race was a ski pole catching a gate a margin of centimeters at 140 kilometers per hour. That can happen to any skier on any run. It happened to her. The pre-existing injury may or may not have played a role in how her body responded in that fraction of a second, but the immediate cause was as simple and brutal as sport gets. She went close to the gate, because that is what the best downhill skiers do. The ones who win are the ones who take the line to its absolute edge. Vonn has always skied that way. It is the reason she has 45 downhill victories, more than any skier, man or woman, in the history of the sport. It is the reason she has 84 World Cup victories overall, third most all time. It is the reason she has 138 World Cup podiums, 3 Olympic medals, and a career that no one in alpine skiing has come close to matching. You cannot separate the way she crashed from the way she won. They come from the same place. CNN ran a piece on the day of the crash that framed her journey not as a tragedy, but as one of the most extraordinary athletic stories of the modern era. She tore her ACL 9 days before the Olympics and still got on that start ramp. And even while being carried off the mountain in pain, she was cheering for her teammate. That is not a failure. That is a life lived at full speed. As of now, Vonn has not spoken publicly since the crash. She is recovering from surgery in Treviso, Italy. Her condition is described as stable. The realistic expectation, held quietly by most people close to the sport, is that February 8, 2026, was the last time Lindsey Vonn ever stood in a starting gate. And if that is true, then the words she wrote the night before turn out to be the most accurate summary anyone could have written about her entire career. No matter what happens, I have already won. Lindsey Vonn did not leave that mountain with a medal. She left on a stretcher, in a helicopter, in pain. But she also left as the woman who came back from retirement, got a titanium knee at 41, tore her ACL 9 days before the Olympics, and still stood in that starting gate believing she could win. That is not a failure. That is one of the most remarkable stories in the history of sport. Now it is your turn. Do you think she was right to race, or should she have stayed out of that gate? Drop your answer in the comments. We read every single one. And if this story moved you even a little, hit that like button, subscribe so you never miss a video, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. We look forward to seeing you in the next one.